There exists a suspended moment between worlds, a fleeting space where life and death meet in a silent embrace. In this sacred territory, some souls pause, reflect, and return to the physical body, while others continue their journey into realms beyond our comprehension. Perhaps you've asked yourself, why do some people come back from near-death experiences with extraordinary stories to tell, while others move on? What determines that crucial moment of decision at the threshold between worlds? For decades, I have devoted my life to collecting and studying accounts from people who briefly visited the other side and returned to tell us what they saw. The most fascinating pattern that emerges from these narratives is not only what these individuals experienced, but the mystery of why some return and others do not. As a doctor and philosopher, I initially sought explanations in the field of physiology, in the brain's chemical reactions to oxygen deprivation, or in the collapsing synapses of the nervous system. Yet, the more testimonies I gathered, the more I realized there was something transcendent at work, beyond purely material explanations. Consider for a moment the story of Elena, a 42-year-old woman who suffered cardiac arrest during a routine surgery. While doctors fought to bring her back, Eleanor traveled through a tunnel of light, encountered deceased relatives, and felt an indescribable loving presence that she identified as divine. At the peak of this experience, she received a clear message. It is not your time yet. You have more to accomplish. Eleanor returned to her body with a renewed sense of purpose and a profound understanding that death is not the end. In contrast to her story, we have the account of Thomas, a man who experienced something similar during a severe car accident. The tunnel, the light, the overwhelming sense of peace, but with a crucial difference. Thomas described arriving at a kind of crossroads where he felt he had the choice to return or move on. After moments of deep reflection, he chose to return not by force, but through an intuitive understanding that he still had important earthly connections to honor. These accounts raise fascinating questions about free will beyond the physical plane. Could it be that in that liminal moment between life and death, the soul exercises a form of conscious choice, or are there greater forces at play, a divine or cosmic plan that determines who returns and who proceeds? Throughout my career, I have observed that this question transcends cultures, religions, and belief systems. It is a universal inquiry into the purpose and destiny of souls. As we delve deeper into the mystery of why some souls return, while others continue their journey beyond, patterns begin to emerge from the thousands of near-death experiences I've documented throughout my career. These patterns suggest that what may appear as random chance to the material observer actually follows a profound spiritual logic, a cosmic choreography of soul evolution that honors both divine purpose and individual choice. Many who have returned speak of encountering what can only be described as a soul contract, an understanding that predates their physical birth about what they came to learn, experience, and contribute during their earthly sojourn. Sarah, a 38-year-old teacher, who clinically died for 6 minutes following a severe allergic reaction, described floating above her body and feeling an overwhelming sense that she wasn't finished yet. When I asked her to elaborate on this feeling, she explained, "It wasn't just about my children or family, though they were part of it. It was deeper, a knowing that I had made agreements before I was born, promises to fulfill certain experiences that were essential to my soul's growth. I simply hadn't completed what I came here to do." This concept of unfulfilled purpose appears consistently in accounts of those who return. It's as if in that expanded state of consciousness, they gain momentary access to a blueprint of their life's journey and can perceive which chapters remain unwritten. Conversely, those who describe being given the choice to move on often report a sense of completion, not that they had achieved perfection, but that they had experienced the essential lessons this particular life journey was meant to offer there. So, what's particularly fascinating is how the understanding of death itself transforms during these experiences. Time and again, those who have glimpsed the other side report that what we call death is neither an end nor an obliteration of consciousness, but rather a transition to another state of being, one that feels paradoxically more real than physical existence. This realization fundamentally alters how the soul perceives the choice to return or continue. When death is no longer feared but understood as a doorway, the decision becomes less about avoiding an end and more about the purpose and timing of transition. One of the most profound aspects of the near-death experience is the altered perception of time. In that liminal state, many report that time as we know it ceases to exist. A few seconds of clinical death can be experienced as hours, days, or even years in the spiritual realm. Some describe reviewing their entire lives in exquisite detail, not as a chronological replay, but as a holistic experience where all moments exist simultaneously. Within this timeless state, the soul seems able to perceive past, present, and potential futures with remarkable clarity, seeing not just what has been, but what could be if they return. This life review process appears to play a crucial role in the soul's decision-making. Unlike our everyday judgments clouded by ego and limited perspective, the life review offers a panoramic view of our actions and their ripple effects through the lives of others. Jennifer, a cancer survivor who experienced clinical death during a complicated surgery, described her life review as seeing not just what I did, but how it made others feel, experiencing their pain or joy as if it were my own. This profound empathic understanding often reveals unfinished emotional business or karmic patterns that may influence the soul's decision to return. Perhaps the most consistent element reported across thousands of NDEs is the encounter with unconditional love. This love, described variously as a light, a presence, or sometimes identified with religious figures, depending on the person's cultural background, appears to be the fundamental substance of the spiritual realm. Those who experience this love often report that it plays a pivotal role in their decision-making process. Some describe being embraced by this love and understanding that either choice, to return or continue, would be equally honored and supported. Robert, a former skeptic who had a profound NDE following a heart attack, expressed it this way: "In the presence of that love, I understood that returning wasn't about obligation or punishment, and continuing wasn't escape or reward. Both paths were equally sacred. The question wasn't about right or wrong, but about what my soul most needed for its evolution at this time." This perspective suggests that the decision faced at the threshold is not judged in human terms of success or failure, but understood within a much larger context of spiritual growth. Another pattern that emerges from these accounts is how different souls seem to operate on different timelines or developmental trajectories. Just as in a classroom children learn at different rates and in different ways, souls appear to have unique evolutionary paths. Some may need multiple returns to physical reality to integrate certain lessons or experiences, while others may accomplish their purposes in fewer journeys. This individual nature of soul evolution may explain why some are guided to return, while others are welcomed to continue their journey beyond the physical plane. The choice to return often comes with a price. Many who come back from the brink describe the difficulty of leaving behind the profound peace, wholeness, and love they experienced. Some even report a reluctance to return, agreeing to do so only after understanding the impact their continued absence would have on loved ones or on work they had yet to complete. This conscious sacrifice, choosing the limitations and challenges of physical existence over the bliss of spiritual realms, suggests a profound commitment to growth and service that transcends individual comfort. What emerges from these countless stories is a picture not of random chance or mere biological resilience, but of souls making choices at the threshold based on a complex interplay of individual purpose, collective connections, spiritual guidance, and evolutionary timing. The patterns suggest that those who return often do so because their soul's journey on earth contains chapters yet to be written, experiences essential not just for their own growth, but for the lives they touch and the contribution they make to the collective human journey. As we continue to explore this profound mystery, we begin to understand that the question of why some souls return and others don't cannot be answered through material science alone. It invites us to consider a multidimensional view of human existence, one where our physical lives are meaningful chapters in a much longer soul narrative, and where the transitions between life and death are not random accidents but sacred thresholds of choice and purpose, What if every soul follows a unique evolutionary trajectory, a sacred path of growth that spans not just one lifetime, but many? This perspective emerges consistently when we examine why some souls return from the threshold while others continue beyond. Through my decades of research, I've come to understand that each near-death experience represents not just a medical anomaly, but a potential inflection point in the soul's larger journey, a moment when the underlying purpose and direction of that journey becomes momentarily visible. The concept of soul evolution suggests that consciousness, like all aspects of creation, undergoes a process of continuous development and refinement. Just as a child progresses through developmental stages on the way to adulthood, souls may move through various stages of spiritual maturity, each with its own lessons, challenges, and capacities. This evolutionary model offers profound insights into the patterns we observe in near-death experiences and the apparent choices made at the threshold. Consider the case of Michael, a construction worker who experienced clinical death after a severe workplace accident. During his NDE, Michael described encountering what he could only call his larger self, a version of his consciousness that seemed to contain not just his current life, but echoes of many others. I somehow understood that I had lived before, and would live again, he told me during our interview. But what was most profound was realizing that all these lives were connected by themes and lessons I was working to master. Coming back this time was about completing something important that fit into a much bigger picture. This perception of past lives and their connection to present purpose emerges frequently in NDE accounts. While in that expanded state of consciousness, many report accessing what appears to be memories or impressions of other lifetimes, and understanding how these experiences connect to their current life circumstances. These glimpses suggest that each physical incarnation may represent a specific chapter focused on particular aspects of the soul's overall development. The decision to return or continue may be influenced by whether the current chapter contains essential elements that remain unintegrated. Equally fascinating is how many NDEs report perceiving not just past lives, but future potentials. In that liminal state beyond time, they describe being shown possible futures that might unfold depending on their choice to return or continue. These aren't perceived as fixed destinies, but as probability fields shaped by free will and choice. David, a physician who experienced an NDE during emergency surgery, described seeing multiple possible futures branching out before him like paths in a garden. I understood that if I chose to return, certain opportunities for growth would be available to me that wouldn't be possible in quite the same way if I continued beyond. These weren't presented as right or wrong choices, just different paths with different qualities of experience. This perspective on future potentials adds another dimension to understanding the choice faced at the threshold. If souls can perceive, however briefly, the growth opportunities offered by returning versus continuing, this awareness likely influences their decision. Some may choose to return precisely because they recognize specific experiences awaiting them that align perfectly with their evolutionary needs at that moment. The concept of spiritual maturity appears to be another significant factor in these threshold decisions. Just as we wouldn't expect a first-grade student to manage college-level material, souls at different stages of development may have different capacities and focuses. Some NDEs describe encountering souls who seemed impossibly ancient and wise, radiating a quality of completion that suggested they had mastered the lessons of physical existence and no longer needed to return. Others describe meeting beings who were still actively engaged in the cycle of physical incarnation, though at different points in their journey. This spectrum of soul development may explain why some individuals report being told firmly that it's not their time, while others describe being given a clear choice. The soul's level of maturity and autonomy may determine how much direct guidance versus freedom of choice it experiences at the threshold. Younger souls may benefit from more direct guidance, while more experienced souls might be entrusted with greater decision-making authority about their path. What's particularly striking is how this spiritual maturity seems unrelated to intellectual achievement or social status in the physical world. Some of the wisest souls I've encountered through my research lived outwardly simple lives, but possessed profound inner development. Conversely, individuals with impressive worldly accomplishments sometimes display spiritual qualities that suggest they are still early in their soul's evolutionary journey. This reminds us that the metrics by which we measure success in physical life may bear little relation to the soul's true development. The role of free will in this evolutionary process cannot be overstated. Nearly all NDEs report that even when strongly guided to return, they retained some element of choice in the matter. This suggests that compulsion is not part of the divine order, that even at the most critical junctures the soul's autonomy is honored, yet this freedom operates within a framework of purpose and consequence. Those who describe choosing to return often report understanding that their choice would have ripple effects, not just for themselves, but for countless others whose lives intersect with theirs. This interplay between individual choice and larger purpose points to one of the most profound insights from NDE research, that soul evolution appears to be both an individual and collective process. While each soul follows its unique developmental trajectory, these paths are interwoven in a magnificent tapestry of mutual growth and service. Some souls may return specifically because their particular gifts or lessons learned are needed by others at this time. Others may continue because their growth requires experiences beyond the physical plane. What emerges from these accounts is a vision of existence far more complex and purposeful than either purely religious or purely materialist paradigms suggest. It's a perspective where physical life represents a meaningful but temporary classroom for the soul's development, one of many environments where consciousness evolves through experience. In this light, the question of why some souls return and others continue takes on new dimensions. It's not simply about unfinished business in the conventional sense, but about the precise location on their developmental path and what experiences would best serve their evolution at that particular juncture. Perhaps most reassuring is the consistent report that this evolutionary journey is not random or arbitrary, but lovingly overseen. Many NDEs describe sensing a vast intelligence or wisdom guiding the process, not controlling it, but supporting each soul's unique path with perfect understanding and compassion. This guidance seems to take into account not just what would benefit the individual soul, but how each soul's journey affects the whole. As we deepen our exploration of why some souls return and others continue their journey beyond the physical, we begin to glimpse a cosmic ecology of consciousness, an intricate system where every soul's path serves not just its own development, but contributes to a larger unfolding of awareness and love. The threshold between life and death becomes not just a medical event, but a sacred junction point where individual purpose meets cosmic design, and where choices made ripple through the fabric of existence in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. Among the most consistent elements reported during near-death experiences is the encounter with other beings, luminous presences that appear to guide, comfort, and sometimes counsel the soul at the threshold between worlds. These encounters offer profound insights into the decision-making process that determines whether a soul returns to physical life or continues its journey beyond. Who are these beings that meet us at the boundary between worlds, and how do they influence one of the most consequential choices a soul can make? In my decades collecting thousands of NDE accounts, I've found that nearly 70% of experiencers report meeting someone on the other side. These encounters typically fall into three categories: deceased loved ones, radiant beings often described as angels or guides, and for many, an overwhelming presence of light frequently identified as God, Source, or the Divine, according to one's cultural framework. The nature of these encounters appears deeply significant to the question of who returns and who continues. Consider the experience of Marcus, a firefighter who was clinically dead for nearly 4 minutes after suffering cardiac arrest. During his NDE, Marcus described being greeted by his grandfather, who had passed 15 years earlier. He looked younger than I remembered him, vibrant and healthy, Marcus recalled. He embraced me with such love, but then looked at me with seriousness and said, "Not yet, son. Your children need their father." It wasn't commanding or forceful. It was like he was reminding me of something I already knew, but had momentarily forgotten. Marcus returned to his body with a renewed sense of purpose centered around his role as a father. Contrast this with Jennifer's experience after complications during childbirth left her clinically dead for nearly 6 minutes. Jennifer described being met by both her deceased father and a grandmotherly figure she had never met in life, but somehow recognized. Unlike Marcus's experience, Jennifer's guides presented her with what she perceived as a choice. "They showed me 2 paths," she explained. "One led back to my husband and newborn son, and the other continued into a light more beautiful than anything I can describe. They told me either choice was honored, but that I needed to understand the full implications of each." After what felt like a profound deliberation, Jennifer chose to return to raise her son. These contrasting experiences suggest that different souls may receive different forms of guidance at the threshold. Some appear to be gently but firmly redirected back to physical life, while others are presented with a more explicit choice. What might account for this difference in approach? One possibility is that it relates to the soul's level of development and readiness. Those who require more directed guidance may be at a different stage in their soul's journey than those who are entrusted with making a more autonomous choice. The communication that occurs during these encounters transcends ordinary language. Many NDEs describe it as a direct mind-to-mind exchange, a telepathic flow of understanding that conveys more in an instant than words could express in hours. "It wasn't like talking," explained Robert, a professor who had an NDE during emergency surgery. "It was more like our thoughts merged, and in that merging I understood not just what they were communicating, but the entire context and meaning behind it. I could perceive their wisdom, their compassion, and the larger perspective from which they were guiding me." This transpersonal communication appears to allow for a far more comprehensive understanding of the choice at hand than would be possible through ordinary consciousness. In this expanded state, the soul can apparently grasp complex implications and interconnections relevant to their decision. Many report receiving not just information, but direct experiential knowledge of how their return or continuation would affect both their own soul journey and the lives of others connected to them. One of the most intriguing aspects of these threshold encounters is what I've come to call the collective choice phenomenon. Some NDEs report that the decision to return or continue isn't made in isolation, but involves a kind of spiritual consultation with other souls. Elizabeth, who experienced an NDE after a severe car accident, described being in a place of incredible beauty and peace, meeting with several beings she somehow recognized as souls connected to hers across many lifetimes. "We seemed to be discussing whether my return would best serve the larger pattern we were all part of," she recalled. "It wasn't just about my individual journey, but about how my experiences and what I'd learned would contribute to our collective growth." This perspective suggests that souls may be organized in what some traditions call soul groups or soul families, clusters of consciousness that evolve together across multiple lifetimes, playing different roles in relation to each other. If this is the case, then decisions about returning or continuing might sometimes be made not just by the individual soul, but through a kind of transpersonal discernment that considers the developmental needs of many interconnected souls. The bias. Tension between divine purpose and free will emerges as another crucial aspect of these threshold encounters. Many NDEs report perceiving what feels like a divine plan or blueprint for their life, a sense that their existence serves a specific purpose within a larger cosmic design. Yet simultaneously, they describe their autonomy being profoundly respected. How can both be true? The accounts suggest a delicate dance between destiny and choice, where souls have real freedom within a framework of purpose and meaning. David, a former atheist who had a profound NDE after drowning, expressed this paradox eloquently. "I understood that I had chosen the major themes and lessons of my life before I was born, but I also had moment-to-moment freedom in how I responded to those themes. At the threshold, I was reminded of my pre-birth intentions and given the choice to continue fulfilling them or to move beyond this lifetime. Both options were presented with complete respect for my decision. This perspective suggests that what we might call divine will operates not through control or command, but through loving invitation and perfect respect for the soul's autonomy. The guidance offered at the threshold appears to reveal rather than impose, helping the soul reconnect with its own deepest intentions and purposes that may have been obscured by the limitations of physical existence. Perhaps one of the most significant factors influencing whether a soul returns is what I've come to call the unheeded calling phenomenon. Many who return report becoming aware during their NDE of a specific purpose or contribution they had intended to make in this lifetime but had not yet fulfilled. This wasn't experienced as obligation or burden, but as a beloved commitment they had freely made and now remembered with clarity and renewed dedication. Sarah, a businesswoman who had an NDE during surgery, described this experience. "I was shown that before this life I had committed to creating a foundation that would help children from disadvantaged backgrounds access education. I had completely forgotten this intention. My career had taken me in an entirely different direction, but in that moment beyond time, I remembered this commitment with such love and purpose. I chose to come back specifically to fulfill this calling." After recovering, Sarah indeed changed the course of her career and eventually established exactly such a foundation. These accounts of remembered purpose suggest that many souls return because they recognize a gap between what they intended to accomplish or experience in this lifetime and what they have actually manifested. The NDE serves as a profound reminder, a reconnection with the soul's original intentions that often leads to dramatic life changes after recovery. For others, the guidance received at the threshold may confirm that their soul's purposes for this particular lifetime have been fulfilled, and that continuing beyond is the next step in their evolution. These individuals often report a sense of completion and peaceful release, along with anticipation of new dimensions of growth and service beyond physical existence. Their guides appear to confirm and honor this completion rather than encouraging return. What emerges from these countless accounts is a picture of threshold guidance that is exquisitely tailored to each soul's unique situation. The beings we meet at the boundary between worlds, whether loved ones, guides, or manifestations of the divine, appear to hold a perspective that encompasses not just our current lifetime, but our entire soul journey. From this expanded view, they offer exactly the form of guidance most appropriate to our evolutionary needs at that precise moment. The journey back from the threshold is rarely a simple return to life as it was before. Those who choose or are guided to re-enter physical existence often undergo profound transformations that ripple through every aspect of their being. Understanding these changes offers us another lens through which to examine the question of why some souls return with such clarity while others continue beyond our physical realm. The most immediate and striking transformation reported by near-death experiences is a radical shift in their relationship with death itself. For most humans, death represents the ultimate unknown, a terrifying void or ending to be feared and avoided at all costs. Yet those who have glimpsed beyond the veil consistently report that this fear dissolves, replaced by a serene understanding that death is merely a transition rather than an end. "I no longer fear death," Maria told me years after her NDE following a severe allergic reaction. "How can you fear something when you've seen what comes next? It would be like fearing the moment of falling asleep when you know the most beautiful dreams await you." This profound absence of death anxiety creates an equally profound change in how returnees approach life. When the ultimate fear is removed, many report an unprecedented freedom to live more authentically and purposefully. John, a corporate executive who had an NDE during heart surgery, explained it this way: "Before my experience, I lived as if building my career and financial security were the most important things, because I was terrified of failure, of not having enough, of not being enough. After seeing what awaits us all, those fears seemed almost comical. I came back focused on creating meaning and connection, not security and status." Alongside this shift in relationship to death comes what many describe as an awakening to a more expansive sense of identity. Before their NDE, most people experience themselves primarily as separate physical beings, discrete individuals defined by their bodies, roles, and personal histories. After returning, Many report a persistent awareness of being much more than their physical form. "I came back knowing that my true self extends far beyond this body and this lifetime," explained Rebecca, a teacher who had an NDE after complications during surgery. "This physical existence feels like wearing a costume in a play, meaningful and purposeful, but not the whole of who I am." This expanded identity creates one of the most fascinating paradoxes reported by returnees. They often become simultaneously more fully engaged in physical life while maintaining a perspective that transcends it. Unlike spiritual seekers who might withdraw from worldly involvement to seek transcendence, NDEs typically report a heightened appreciation for the physical world combined with a broader perspective on its place in their soul's journey. They describe living with a foot in both worlds, fully present to the textures, challenges, and joys of physical existence while maintaining awareness of its temporary and relative nature. Perhaps most significant to our exploration of why some souls return with clarity is the profound sense of purpose that typically accompanies them back into physical life. Unlike the vague sense of meaning many people struggle to find, NDEs often return with a crystalline understanding of why they are here and what they are meant to contribute. "It wasn't just a general feeling that life has purpose," explained Thomas, a former skeptic who had an NDE after a car accident. "I was shown specific ways my experiences and gifts were meant to serve others. It was like being handed a detailed blueprint for the rest of my life, not controlling my choices, but illuminating the opportunities for service that awaited me." This clarity of purpose appears to be a major factor in who returns and who continues. Many NDEs report being shown that they have specific contributions still to make, unique gifts, perspectives, or services that would be of particular value to others at this time. Those who return with the greatest sense of mission often describe understanding that their particular life experiences, even and especially the painful ones, have prepared them to offer something distinctive that is needed in the world right now. The integration process after returning is rarely simple or automatic, however. Many NDEs describe struggling to translate the expansive awareness and understanding they experienced beyond the veil into the limitations of physical existence and human language. "It's like trying to pour the ocean into a teacup," one returnee told me. The experience contained such vastness, such completion, and coming back into the filtered sequential experience of physical consciousness feels incredibly constraining at first. This challenge of integration reveals another dimension of why some souls may choose to continue rather than return, the recognition that certain realizations can be fully embodied only beyond the limitations of physical existence. Those who return often report being shown that their growth requires the particular constraints and challenges of embodied life, while others may be ready to continue their evolution in less restricted realms. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of integration is what many have called the impossible task of living in linear time after experiencing timelessness. During the NDE, most report experiencing all moments simultaneously, past, present, and future, perceived as a unified whole rather than a sequential progression. Returning to the strict linearity of physical time can create a profound sense of constraint. "After experiencing how time really works beyond the physical," explained Michael, a physicist who had an NDE during emergency surgery, "coming back to sequential time feels like being asked to live in only 2 dimensions after experiencing 3. You know there's more, but you're suddenly limited in your ability to access it. Yet this very constraint appears to be purposeful for those who return." Many report understanding that the limitations of physical existence, including linear time, material needs, and the veil of forgetting that obscures our broader spiritual awareness, create the perfect conditions for certain kinds of growth and learning that cannot be achieved in less restricted states. The souls who return often do so with an appreciation for how these very limitations serve their evolution. The process of reintegration frequently follows a pattern I've observed across hundreds of cases. Initially, there is often a period of difficulty as the returnee struggles to reconcile the expansive awareness they experienced with the constraints of physical existence. This may manifest as depression, alienation, or a sense of no longer belonging in ordinary reality. Over time, however, most discover ways to bridge these seemingly separate realms, finding practices, perspectives, and communities that help them maintain connection with the broader awareness while effectively navigating physical life. What emerges through this integration process is often a remarkable synthesis. Individuals who are deeply engaged with addressing the challenges and opportunities of physical existence while maintaining awareness of its place within a much larger spiritual ecology. They become what some traditions might call walkers between worlds, souls who can access and translate between different dimensions of reality, bringing insights and perspective from one realm into the other. This unique perspective may be precisely why some souls choose to return even after experiencing the peace and wholeness of spiritual realms. They recognize the tremendous value of beings who can bridge these worlds, who can bring the wisdom, compassion, and expanded perspective of spiritual dimensions into the challenging arena of physical existence where so many remain caught in limited awareness. The qualities that most consistently emerge in those who have successfully integrated their NDE include profound compassion, reduced materialism, heightened appreciation for the present moment, and what can only be described as a species-level perspective, an ability to view human challenges and possibilities from a vantage point that transcends cultural, national, and even temporal limitations. These qualities represent precisely the kind of expanded awareness that our collective human journey so desperately needs at this critical juncture in our development. Perhaps this offers us the most compelling insight into why some souls return, while others continue, that each choice serves a purpose within a larger ecology of consciousness evolution. Those who return bring back perspectives, insights, and qualities of being that help illuminate the path for others still fully identified with physical existence. Those who continue support this process from dimensions beyond the physical, holding the broader pattern and purpose that contextualizes our individual and collective human journey. As we draw the threads of our exploration together, a more unified and transcendent understanding begins to emerge, one that may help us glimpse the profound choreography behind the question of why some souls return from the threshold while others continue their journey beyond. What if both choices, returning and continuing, represent not opposites but complementary movements in the same cosmic dance of consciousness evolution? Throughout human history, we have tended to view life and death as absolute opposites, presence versus absence, being versus non-being. Yet the consistent testimony of those who have glimpsed beyond the veil suggests something far more nuanced and beautiful. What we perceive as separate states may in fact be different positions on a continuous spectrum of consciousness, different vibrational frequencies of the same fundamental awareness that animates all existence. In this light, the choice faced at the threshold is not between life and death in the conventional sense, but between different arenas for the soul's ongoing journey. Physical existence, with its particular limitations and intensities, offers certain kinds of growth experiences that cannot be replicated in more expanded states. Meanwhile, the realms beyond physical form allow for other dimensions of development that are difficult to access while identified with a material body and brain. Consider for a moment how a dancer moves between different positions, sometimes grounded in deep plie, other times soaring in graceful leaps. Each position has its purpose and beauty. Neither is superior to the other. Similarly, souls may move between physical incarnation and more expanded states according to the particular qualities and experiences needed for their evolution at any given moment. This perspective helps explain why some souls who have achieved significant spiritual development choose to return to physical existence rather than continuing beyond. They recognize that certain qualities, such as compassion, patience, forgiveness, or courage, can be developed with particular potency through the challenges and limitations of physical life. Meanwhile, others may continue beyond because their next stage of growth requires the expansiveness and direct perception available in non-physical realms. What's particularly striking in near-death accounts is how consistently experiencers report that both choices, returning or continuing, are held in equal esteem by the beings and presences they encounter beyond the veil. There is no sense that one path is inherently more advanced or spiritual than the other. Rather, each soul's unique developmental needs determine which environment will best serve its evolution at any particular juncture. This understanding liberates us from the subtle spiritual materialism that often creeps into our thinking, the notion that transcending physical existence is somehow more spiritually advanced than engaging with it. The testimony of NDEs suggests a different wisdom, that incarnation itself is a sacred privilege, an opportunity to develop and express qualities that cannot be cultivated in quite the same way in less constrained realms. Elizabeth, an artist, who had a profound NDE after nearly drowning, expressed this perspective eloquently. I was shown that coming into physical form is like an advanced soul practice, voluntarily accepting limitation, so that certain qualities can be developed through resistance and challenge. It's like how a musician needs the constraint of their instrument to create music, or how a potter needs the resistance of clay to shape something beautiful. From the perspective I was given, physical life isn't a lesser state to escape from. It's a precious crucible for certain kinds of spiritual development. This view of incarnation as purposeful constraint rather than punishment or limitation aligns with wisdom traditions that have long viewed physical existence as a deliberate choice made by the soul for its evolution. In this light, returning to physical life after an NDE may represent not a demotion or failure, but a courageous choice to continue developing through the particular intensities and challenges of embodied existence. Equally important is the recognition that souls who continue beyond the threshold are not simply finished or graduating in any final sense. The consistent testimony of NDEs suggests that consciousness evolution continues indefinitely, with new horizons of growth and service opening at each stage of development. Those who continue beyond physical existence move not into static perfection, but into new dimensions of learning, creation, and contribution appropriate to their stage of development. This perspective offers profound comfort regarding loved ones who have died. Rather than viewing them as having ended or disappeared, we might understand that they have transitioned to another phase of their ongoing journey, continuing to grow, learn, and participate in the larger field of consciousness of which we remain a part. Many NDEs report recognizing that the boundaries between the living and the dead are far more permeable than our conventional understanding suggests, that our departed loved ones remain connected to us, aware of our lives, and sometimes actively supportive of our journey, though typically from a broader perspective than they held while physically incarnate. Perhaps most significantly, this unified perspective helps us recognize that the apparent division between physical and spiritual realms may exist primarily in our limited human perception rather than in ultimate reality. Those who have glimpsed beyond report experiencing a fundamental unity, underlying all the diverse forms and dimensions of existence, a continuous field of consciousness or love that expresses itself through countless variations while remaining essentially whole. Thomas, a hospice physician who had his own NDE during surgery, described this understanding. What I was shown is that reality is like an infinite ocean of consciousness, and what we call different realms or dimensions are like different depths within that same ocean. At the surface, the waves appear separate and distinct. That's like our physical reality, where everything seems divided and individual. As you go deeper, you discover the connections between all things and the unifying currents that move through everything. Go deeper still, and you experience the absolute oneness at the source, but it's all the same ocean. This ocean metaphor offers us perhaps the most comprehensive framework for understanding the question we began with. Some souls return to the relative turbulence and separation of the surface, because that environment offers particular opportunities for growth and service. Others continue to deeper levels because their development requires the greater unity and direct perception available there. Neither choice is superior. Both serve the soul's ongoing evolution and contribute to the greater whole. What emerges from thousands of near-death accounts is a vision of existence far more continuous, purposeful, and compassionate than either conventional religious or materialist. Paradigms typically suggest we glimpse a cosmos where consciousness itself appears to be the fundamental reality, not an accidental byproduct of physical processes, but the ground of being from which all forms arise. Within this conscious cosmos, each soul's journey unfolds through various dimensions of experience, with movements between physical and non-physical realms serving its unique developmental path. The decision faced at the threshold, to return or continue, takes place within this larger context of purpose and evolution. It is not random or arbitrary, but exquisitely aligned with each soul's needs and contributions at a given moment in its journey. Some return because their path of growth requires further physical experience. Others continue because their evolution calls them to other dimensions of reality. Both choices are held within what countless experiences describe as a field of unconditional love that honors the sacred unfolding of each consciousness, while holding awareness of how all paths ultimately contribute to the whole. As we conclude, our exploration, perhaps the most precious insight we can take from these thousands of journeys to the threshold and back, is that life and death are not the opposites we have long believed them to be. They are instead complementary phases in consciousness's eternal dance of becoming. The souls who return bring back glimpses of the larger pattern for those of us still identified primarily with physical existence. They remind us that we are far more than our bodies, that love transcends physical separation, and that the journey of consciousness continues far beyond what our limited human perception can grasp. In this light, the question of why some souls return and others continue opens into a vast and beautiful mystery that invites our contemplation rather than demanding final answers. It calls us to hold our existence within a far larger context than daily concerns typically allow, to remember that our brief physical lives are meaningful chapters in a much longer story of consciousness unfolding through endless forms and dimensions of experience. Whatever our beliefs about what awaits beyond the threshold, the testimony of those who have glimpsed beyond the veil invites us to live with greater awareness of the preciousness of each moment and the boundless nature of the journey we share.